And as we can see on the screen, Girija has prepared sexual harassment in public spaces, policing as a solution, and women's economic participation. Strangely, I was given a topic, combating sexual harassment in public spaces and fostering greater female participation in the workforce. And I thought all of us would like to know what she meant by fostering and why not workplaces and why workforce. But Girija, as we all know, is a young research economist, and she's a pass out, a graduate from St. Stephen's with bachelor's in economics, master's in economics again from University of Cambridge. She did MPhil in, now I don't know how to pronounce it, Toulouse. Interesting. Toulouse School of Economics in France, and capped it up with PhD in economics in Brown University in US. Before I give the mic to Girija, I would like to share, once my program coordinator, Professor Ed Chu in University of Minnesota, had a remark when I asked him why India is left behind, why we aren't making the progress that we should. And I thought he'll come out with democracy is slow, overpopulation. But surprisingly, after 2 days, he called me and he said, that's because in your country, practitioners don't take advantage of the research by academicians. And this research in police, law enforcement, is really really missing. And I felt so happy that Girija now is giving academic, solid information. I hope you will share with many officers working on the ground what we feel intuitively, but today we are backed with research. So I personally consider today a success of practitioner and academicians coming together. And I look forward to you, Girija, and to your presentation. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy to see so many of you interested in this topic and my research. I'll be presenting a subset of what I've worked on for the last many years because I wanted to make sure that Borwankar ma'am's expertise is linked to what I'm presenting. So I'll really be focusing on policing solutions. And I want to follow a very open format, else I should run it past the organizer. But if anyone has any questions in between, or you feel like something is not clear, please just speak up, and that would be the best way to do this, because I don't want to keep on moving on when no one is understanding, or there's a burning question which needs to be asked. So please do that. So I want to start off by saying that policing works to reduce violence against women in public spaces, but terms and conditions apply. And that's the part that I really want to talk about, as to when it works, how it works, and what changes it can bring. But before I talk about solutions, I want to tell you a little bit about the problem. So the problem is street harassment, sexual harassment in public spaces, which is pervasive. So here you can see in this map, this is all anecdotal and qualitative evidence that we have available from all over the world, most of which is concentrated in urban centers. And we find that women face harassment in public spaces very often and at high rates. And what is harassment? So this is another question which keeps coming up. So it's basically anything that makes women feel uncomfortable. It could be something as harmless as staring. So when people are staring at a woman and she feels uncomfortable, that is harassment. And it goes all the way up to a full-blown assault. So all of that constitutes sexual harassment. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about how little we know about how much harassment there is. So let me take you to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, where I have some work, where we find that police reports really do not reflect the reality. So we find that in Dar es Salaam, there were 173 cases reported in 2021. This is for the entire city, which basically means that there is 0.006% of the population that is affected by such harassment. But when you look at national survey data, this number goes up a little bit. So we see, well, goes up quite a lot, but still far from the truth. We find that this number goes up to 20%. So the domestic health surveys show that there is 20% of harassment that women have faced in public spaces in the past 6 months. When we do representative household surveys, which is obviously better methodologically, where now we are working with households, we are speaking to the people in the household, we are speaking to women in households, we find that this number goes up to 59%. So 59% of women have faced some form of harassment while traveling in public transport in Dar es Salaam. But then when we take one step ahead and we actually look at crowdsourced data, almost all women report having faced some form of harassment in the last 6 months. So this should give you a sense of we just do not know how much harassment there is. And there is really little that's been done in measuring it and just figuring out what is the problem. So this is where I want to start. So I have a study in Dar es Salaam to really try to measure the extent and types of harassment that women face. And do this in a very rich way because, whenever we interact, so I have the privilege of being at the World Bank, so I directly interact with a lot of policymakers, government counterparts, and a lot of times, the questions are very basic. They're like, if you're telling me that I should put all of my police force to solve 173 women's problems, that's not going to happen, right? So that's the point. If we do not measure the problem, then we cannot garner the resources. Both, I'm not just talking about monetary resources, but also mental resources, put thought behind policy design to solve the problem. So we developed this mobile app called Gianni, which is Swahili for On Your Way, to really measure harassment. And we partnered with all but one, so 15 universities in Dar es Salaam and their students to really measure their experiences while they're moving. And we've collected extremely rich geospatial data. So if you see here, the rounds show the number of incidents, and the places where the rounds are is where the harassment has taken place. And this data is based on almost 1,200 women who move around the city, and we've recorded this data over 39 weeks. And you can see that, you cannot see the population density, but basically wherever there is population, there is harassment. So, wherever people are, there is harassment taking place. And I want to take the work that I've done in Dar es Salaam to also tell you a little bit about how women move, because that's very different from how men move around the city. And most of the harassment that women face is, like the focus here is the harassment that they face when they're in public spaces, moving outside their homes. So in Dar es Salaam, over 80% of women leave their neighborhood at least 4 times a week. So, this whole thing of like, oh, women don't step out of the house, and, then why should we bother about solving women's problems is not actually true. And the data I'm showing for Dar es Salaam, but this is really true for most developing cities.
Which year, this study?
This particular data is from 2021. Yes. The study went on for a few years, but the baseline data was collected in 2021. And we find that when women travel by multiple modes. So this is something known as, they're multimodal trips. So it's not like a woman gets out of the house, she sits in a car, and she gets to her destination. That doesn't happen that often with women. So women get out of the house, they'll take the metro, then they'll get out from there, they'll take the bus, then they'll take an e-rickshaw, and they'll finally get to their location. So women have to sort of, match multiple modes when they're moving around. Plus, majority of women travel by public transport, and this is for more than 1 hour daily. So this is a lot of exposure and a lot of time spent in public transport. And women are also more likely to be income poor. So, they're on average poorer than men. And that's the reason they're more dependent on public transport as opposed to private transport. So this is another thing to keep in mind. And we find that there's high rates of harassment. So you can see that in our sample, 55% of women reported feeling unwanted staring. 74% of women have faced unwanted catcalls or sounds. 33% have been unwantedly touched or stroked. And there's also 20% who've been stalked while traveling. So these are very high rates of harassment when you think about, women who are just trying to get from one place to the other, and then they have to face these costs for really no reason and no fault of theirs. And what's really interesting is that when we look at where most of this harassment takes place, we find that almost 90% of it is associated with public transport. So it's either while women are waiting for public transport, trying to access public transport, are in public transport. And this is, this slide is really important when we are talking to the governments, as I mentioned, because it's really not about some space which is not managed, but it's really about the transport that is being provided for the people by the government. And that's the reason that, we all need to have a collective voice to sort of ask for spaces which are safer for women. And now this is the key part, which is that, and this brings us back to the first slide, which is that 2% of the victims report the incident to the police. So nothing reaches the police. So when we see these 173 incidents, it's not surprising because no one feels comfortable in going to the police to report it. Now, what are the consequences of this harassment? So I've given you at least some insight into the extent of the problem, and I hope I've convinced you that this is a major problem which is affecting a large number of women. And even though Dar es Salaam is one example, if I showed you figures for Delhi, they would be worse than this, okay? So just to give you a sense. So in terms of consequences, I worked with students in Delhi University, and what I found very interestingly is that women choose lower ranked colleges than men in these elite colleges of Delhi University. And these are high achieving women who have actually scored. This is such a great audience because I can just say, class 12th marks, and I do not need to explain anything. But, they literally have the same scores as men in class 12th, but they're choosing lower quality colleges. And then the question is, why? And does safety have a role to play? So what we see is that 95% of women aged 16 to 49 years feel unsafe in public spaces. And 84% of women under 40 report avoiding certain areas of the city in order to feel safer. So they're just like, oh, we don't want to go there because, that's dodgy, or like, I feel unsafe. So they're literally like not going to certain spaces because they feel unsafe. I know it doesn't come as any surprise to this audience. I'm not hearing any of the usual, because I think it's so deeply ingrained and we just think it's so normal. Of course, everyone does that. Everyone avoids this. But it is really not, right? It is really not. And the key here is that only women have to do all this. Men don't have to do this, right? Men can go wherever they like, whenever they like, most times. So I use a combination of data sources. So there's rich survey data, there's Google Maps, which we all have, use very regularly, and there's also mobile app data to study this question of like how much of women's educational choices, higher educational choices, are being affected by safety concerns. So these are all the students in my sample. I wanted to give you a little bit of sense of, the kind of data we work with and what researchers do and the effort that goes into answering these questions. So this is almost 4,000 students who are spread out all over Delhi, and they're attending these 8 colleges, the colleges who agreed to partner with me to do this study. And it required a lot of convincing from me and actually my mom, I would like to say. Back then, this is from my PhD. And we got them to sort of partner up to do this study. And we use, mobile app data, safety pin, and safe city to create this safety map. Because one of the things when I started working on this topic was what I started with, that there is just no measures. There's no measures of harassment. There's no understanding of what women feel when they're in public spaces. So this data gave us some insight into women's perceptions. Like, how do you feel when you're in these different spaces? Like, how are women, how do I decide that I don't want to go in that spot? Is it dark? Is it poorly constructed? Is there like strange people standing there? So all of those. So this is the data then that goes in to make this safety map, where the green areas are considered safe and the dark red areas are considered highly. And yes, please.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Actually, I remember this study specifically because my organization.
Louder, please.
Yeah. Hi, I am a journalist.
Okay.
Covering this event. Can you put the mic? so sorry for interrupting.
No, please, I welcome interruptions. Very good example. Yes.
Actually, I'm a journalist
Okay.
and I'm covering this conference also, but I
Right.
specifically remember the details of this study that girls prefer lower rank colleges more because my organization also covered it.
Okay.
I wanted to ask, isn't it in 2017 or is it the recent development in the study?
No. So this is a paper you'll see from that was published in 2021. So this is one disclaimer. All economics papers take forever to actually come out in the open.
Because we did it back in 2017 and 2018.
Yes, so this paper actually the data collection was in 2017. So right, and I want to talk about, so these are the things that we use to sort of talk about the problem and the consequences, and then all the solutions are new. So that would be probably new material for you.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks. So yes, so as I mentioned, this is from my PhD. We did the data collection in 2016, 2017, and this is a working paper, as it says, from 2021. Okay, so we use this rich data to try to understand women's perceptions of safety. And then we have, I collected very detailed travel information on women's routes. So you see this is one particular student who's traveling from home to college. And we use this to measure sort of safety scores, quantitatively, what is the safety score associated with women's travel. And all of this shows that women are paying high costs for feeling safe. So we find that women are willing to spend 2 times the annual tuition to travel by a safer route relative to men. That's like 20,000 rupees per month that they're paying to just feel safer while traveling. And this, the fact that they're choosing lower quality colleges is not just about higher travel costs, or it's not just about, being in a worse building. It has long-term consequences. So it affects the jobs that you get when you graduate. It affects the peer group that you have, which is the networks that you will have going forward. And we find that is almost equivalent to 20% of their lifetime salary being wiped out just because they feel safe or unsafe while traveling, which then affects their lifetime outcomes. And even though the results of this paper are really about women's higher education, I want to say that, they speak to a lot of other choices that women are making. The choice of whether to work or not, the choice of where to work, the choice of how much to work, because all of that is related to how much time they spend outside the home, how much time they spend traveling. Really the consequences are dire. So now I've talked a little bit about the extent of the problem, saying that it is pervasive and widely present and affects a lot of women. We've seen the consequences, which are quite, dramatic, and they're really affecting women's long-term outcomes. And now next, I want to go to the policing solutions. Yes.
So when we say the choices which women make, during the study, did you find out, are these choices by the girls and women or by the parents?
This is such a great question. So this is something that, so there's 2 reasons why this is a great question. First, because, is this being imposed on the women? And second, if we're coming in from a policy angle, whose views do we have to affect? Is it the parents or is it the children? So we asked in the survey, how much influence do parents have on your choices? And what we found is that parents have a lot more influence on girls' choices than boys' choices. But we cannot clearly say that all of the decisions are being made by the parents. So we can say that parents have a huge role to play, but we cannot say all of it is the parents' decisions. And just not work that I'm presenting here, but we also worked with women, almost, again, surprisingly, 3,800 women in industrial training institutes. So these are the vocational training institutes which are present, all over the country. And when we spoke to women there, we found that there as well, the parents have a huge influence on whether they join a profession after graduating. So that's very interesting. It's a completely different set of women compared to, elite colleges in Delhi University, who are usually higher socioeconomic status, have higher aspirations, are already sort of dealing in a much more, favorable norm system, let's call it. And compared to the ITI women who are actually entering vocational training with the view and with the mindset of joining a job, even then we find, and that we actually find more clearly because we got an insight into this being an issue in this paper. So we asked these questions much better in our next study, and we find their parents have a huge role to play in women not joining professions that they have literally been trained for at the ITIs. So parental views matter a lot. Yes, please.
What about intersectionality? Have you looked at the intersectionality of caste, class, religion? Because that becomes very important when we talk about this.
Right. So the survey, I mean, this particular survey in colleges was, they really wanted to minimize the controversial areas in the survey. And I remember specifically they asked me that you can drop, you have to drop some controversial thing. So I didn't drop the harassment modules because I needed those. And I dropped all the caste related ones. But I can say that the one intersectionality that we looked at was to do with socioeconomic status. And that is really interesting. It's exactly what you would expect. So women who are from a higher socioeconomic status pay more in terms of travel, and they still go to higher rank colleges. Whereas lower socioeconomic status women have to pay with quality because they do not have money to pay with, essentially. So that's the one intersectionality that we looked at. So I want to come to the policing solutions. So first I want to take you to Hyderabad, where we partnered with the Hyderabad City Police to evaluate their She Teams program. So this is a program that probably, Borwankar ma'am, you are familiar with. But so this is a program that started after the Nirbhay gang rape case, and it's been around for a while. But it was, the team, the city police, Hyderabad City Police team was not sure whether it's working well, what is working, what is not working. So they invited researchers to partner with them to really try to understand what is it about patrolling that specifically targets harassment against women that works. So we implemented a hotspot, so places which are known to be rife with harassment and where there are women around. We looked at hotspots and we varied the presence of police and also the visibility of police. So before we came into the picture, Hyderabad City Police was just patrolling these areas with plainclothes, so civil dress police officers. And the reason they were doing that is because they're resource constrained. They were like, we don't have enough officers to send around, and we just want to create this illusion of omnipresence. They use that phrase. And that's why we want to put plainclothes officers. And we said that, but this is based on what? So they said, no, we just think that this is the right thing to do. So we're like, okay, so why don't you let us actually give you something quantitative to, evaluate what works and what doesn't. So we convinced them to really add a uniformed police arm. So where uniformed officers would be moving around these hotspots and see how that affects the type and frequency of incidents, and also really what is it that is affecting harassment behavior. Is it the fact that undercover officers are better able to nab a perpetrator? So, they know someone is getting harassed, so they will just catch them, take them away. Or is it uniformed officers where basically perpetrators can see that there's a uniformed officer and they know that it's not a good idea to harass a woman because we'll get caught. So we don't know which part of it works better. And also, how do police officers' views come into play? We also have to remember that police officers are people who come with their own thoughts, their own biases, their own views, and they're delivering a service which is deeply, affected by their effort. The amount of effort police officers put in the field affects outcomes. So, as I said, so we collaborated with the Hyderabad City Police. We had 156 police officers recruited to patrol these areas. The daily patrolling was from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 6 days a week. And the She Teams officers visited these hotspots or these little locations about 3 times a week. And we made sure that, we randomly assigned officers. So it was not like the same officer would go to the same location, but we requested the officers to sort of go everywhere. And there was an element of surprise. Every day in the morning, the officers would get their sheet of where they had to go. So they could not plan or trade or, all the things that police officers can potentially do. And this intervention lasted for 6 months. So I just wanted to show you, this is one of our hotspots. And there's a team of 2 to, this picture is not very clear, but there's a gentleman who with his hands crossed. So that's actually an undercover police officer right there. These undercover police officers were, a team of 2 to 3 officers, of which one had to be a female officer. And there had to be at least one senior officer. So that's assistant sub-inspector or above. There was constant check-ins that police officers were at the location that they're supposed to be at. There was a lot of sharing of pictures and their experiences via WhatsApp. So this I've already explained, but this particular map I just want to show you. So green is the areas where we did not change anything. Yellow is the areas, yellow dots are the areas in Hyderabad where we sent undercover officers. And red is the areas where we had uniformed officers go. And then we compare the effects across these colors to be able to say something about what's happening. We took the opportunity to go to Charminar when we were there, which was also one of the hotspots. So that's the picture there. So one thing that we did here, and this has been a running theme in my presentation, is really, really trying to figure out how do we measure harassment and how do we do it well. So here we actually recruited female enumerators, so young women who just were in these hotspots and they just were observing behavior, and they are the ones who recorded how much harassment was taking place. So we use this very, objective measure to understand whether the policy is working or not. And we have data on almost 25,000 observations of harassment from these hotspots. So there's a lot of high frequency data that we have to do this. So the first question, which I'm sure is in your mind, is like, oh, did the officers actually do what you wanted to do? This question is literally like the first question that everyone asks us, that you're saying you made the officers do all this, but did they actually do it? So we do find that they do it. So they patrol more in uniformed areas and undercover areas compared to areas where they were not supposed to be. They issue more warnings, they issue more sanctions. So we see more activity in these areas. That is really the first thing, that the officers are present there. Now, the next thing is, what does it do to harassment?
Girija?
Yes.
Last slide again.
Yes.
Their undercover seems to be patrolling duration more, 18.
Yes, my God, these are such great questions. So this is again such a great question, because why is it that the duration is longer there? So interestingly, because undercover officers are doing more of the warnings and sanctions because they're able to apprehend more. So they are sort of in the sidelines. Ma'am, this is really a very good question, which we didn't actually think of initially. And then, we have to go through this review process and all of that in our publications. And then someone had asked us this, and that's how we did it. So that's why I'm saying this is a great question. So undercover officers issue more warnings and sanctions, which takes time. So they have a register where they have to actually write down, what's your name, and then they give warnings. And then if that same person is caught anywhere in Hyderabad, that shows up in their database, then that person is put in jail after 2 warnings. So the third warning is basically go to jail. So that's the reason they're actually spending more time. Whereas uniformed officers don't have so many incidents to apprehend. And that's what I will come to, which is the key driver of these effects, which is just the sheer presence of these officers changes behaviors because you can see them. So now coming to the main variable of interest for us, which was harassment. So what we find is something really, again, very interesting and something that we did not expect. So we find that uniformed officers reduce severe forms of harassment. So severe forms of harassment is anything touch and beyond. So touching, groping, assault, all of that comes under severe forms of harassment. And mild forms of harassment are anything which do not involve touch. So unwanted catcalls, inappropriate sounds, staring. So what we find is that uniformed officers were able to reduce severe forms of harassment, but not mild forms of harassment. And undercover officers were actually not as effective as uniformed officers on anything. And the reason this is something which is truly surprising is because 70% of the harassment in public spaces is actually mild. Only 30% is severe. So they're moving something which is lower frequency, it's rarer, but they are able to reduce that by a third, that which is a lot. So then we were like, oh, why is this happening, and why is there such limited change in mild forms of harassment? So then we designed a lab experiment. We basically wanted to interact with these police officers to understand how they think and what are they feeling when they're in the field patrolling. And what we found, so this is the lab experiment that we designed. So that's actually a lab that Hyderabad City Police set up for us. We also, you guys will think we try to control everything, but we had desks which were then randomly assigned to officers. because we didn't want them sitting with their friends and, saying the same thing. So yeah, and then we created these videos which would mimic real cases. So we had videos where, a woman would be being harassed or an ATM theft would be taking place, and we recorded these officers' reactions to these videos that we created to mimic real life. And what we found is that officers are actually equally able to detect mild and severe forms of harassment. And so they're equally able to detect mild and severe forms of harassment, but they say that they think it's harder to detect mild forms of harassment, number one. Number two, they think that they should not be punishing these forms of harassment. Why? Why do we need to punish this? This is so common. This is not even a problem. This is despite this being illegal under the IPC. Like, all of these forms of harassment are illegal, and there are fines and penalties associated with it. So it's really about like police officers' tolerance and willingness to address these, which is affecting lack of action. So this now takes us, we got this amazing insight. We were like, we have to do something about it. So then we went to Bihar. We are always looking for eager partners, people who are willing to partner up. So then we went to Bihar, and we designed a theater of the oppressed, like sort of, engaging curriculum to change police officers' views around gender-based violence and around women. So we targeted 3,500 police officers across 422 police stations across 12 districts in Bihar. This is like a huge effort, because when we went to the state and we said we wanted to do this, they were like, only do it first of all if it's going to work. And then we were like, we don't know. We're going to find out. And then the second thing they said is, please do it if, you'll be able to say something of how this would work across the state. So we needed a critical mass to be able to do this. So that's why we had to work with a lot of the districts. So what we find is exactly like Hyderabad, officers show a high degree of bias against women victims. 84% of the officers in our sample said that the complaints by women are more believable if a woman is accompanied by a man versus alone. Yeah. So this is the thing. Everyone is like, but this is like, and 83% said that incidents like chain snatching and molestation occur because the woman is alone. Because she's alone, that's why she's being harassed, or that's why she's being targeted. 53% say that women who are harassed or raped is because the victims, do not behave in a socially acceptable manner. So classic victim blaming. And 46% believe that proof of burden lies on the victim when it's an incident of violence against women. So this is to just tell you that, from our sample of officers, we see that there's such deep-rooted bias, and, clearly something needs to be done about it. So we developed a first of its kind anti-gender bias curriculum, which is really mixed, is full of interactive exercises. So there's role-playing, group discussions, elements of street theater. And the reason for this is because when we worked, we interacted with these, we were working with the police team. They told us, whatever training you do, bore mat karna. That's the only thing they told us. That was the only one directive, bore mat karna. So we were like, we better make it interesting for them, So we really used all these tools of Bollywood. We showed them clips of Amitabh Bachchan sitting as a police officer, and then discussed what they thought. So there was a lot of introspection in this training. We actually taught them what they thought was wrong with Amitabh Bachchan's behavior, or if a woman was to step in, how would Amitabh Bachchan react, and would that be the right way to react? These kinds of things. So here you can see some pictures of this training that we did. So we have SAP and CD, which is do's and don'ts as a police officer, and then circle of influence. What we found very interestingly here is that a lot of times officers think they don't have the power to influence a lot of things, but they do actually have the power, but they think that they don't. For example, with domestic violence cases, when they come up, they think that they don't have the power to intervene. But they do actually, because when we speak to women, they think that it would be helpful if someone came and talked to the husband and said that this is not okay. So long story short, we did a 24 to 30 hour training, which we developed in collaboration with lawyers, NGOs, and police officers over a year and a half. And all of this training was really targeting truthfulness perception, technical knowledge, victim blaming, empathy towards victims, which is really important, and attitudes towards GBV, and also thinking a little bit about the female officers that are in the workforce. Like, what are the norms that are surrounding them and also in the household. We also developed a Gen GBV handbook with beautiful pictures in Madhubani to really bring it back home in Bihar. And this is something that we gave to the officers for them to refer to, if in case they forgot what we said, and just bring back the stories that we discussed.
Which year?
This is actually just recently completed. So we are still analyzing the FIR data, but this particular data is from 2023.
Because just now, Bihar has the highest rate of women in police.
Yes, that is true. It is true. It's still not the 33% that it should be, but
the
it is
highest.
24%. That's true. It is the highest. I think MPs may be slightly higher, but it's up there on top. That's true, ma'am. So, so the exit interviews that we did with the officers show that they found the training extremely helpful. So 97% of the officers who attended the training state that the training had helped them to deal better with female citizens. 64% had consulted the booklet even after we left, which we found very nice because we put in a lot of effort in that. And in terms of the results and effects, we see that after 4 to 6 months of the intervention, we find that officers improved both in their technical skills and also their soft skills with just 24 to 30 hours of training. So, I mean, this is very light touch and it can really improve women's experiences with the police. So I want to wrap up now, and the key takeaways of this. So first, I think we really need to invest in understanding the problem. And I think this is true with any problem. If we do not know the problem, we cannot measure we cannot do anything. So I think really measuring the problem and doing it in a way that is scalable or, can be taken across contexts is really important. We find that police can reduce severe forms of harassment via deterrence. So just the sheer presence of uniformed officers affects harassment. And that policing is really being done by people, officers, and it requires effort. And we have to really work towards, building favorable norms towards all the citizens that they're serving to help them serve them. Thank you. Sheila Aunty.
The house is open now.
Thank you, Girija, for the detailed information. I'd just like to add one more thing in my travels.
Ma'am, please introduce yourself.
This is, I'm Satvushila Chavan. In my travels across India, I would like to mention, since you mentioned police officers, there's a problem for women police officers. They do not have proper toilets for men and women, and they are molested when they go to the toilet. This report I've been collecting for a number of years. I've spoken to many DGs in Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan too. I don't know if any action has been taken. So this is another side of women harassment which has to be addressed, because the women who are supposed to protect our women are also harassed.
No, I mean, this is actually true for women starting from when they're little children. When we look at schools, they're supposed to have toilets, and there are no toilets. If there are toilets, they're not functional. If they're functional, they don't lock. So there's a lot of issues, and there's studies which show that when provision of toilets is actually ensured, it has massive effects, positive effects, and obviously they kick in more around adolescence because of everything that's associated with that for young girls. And I'm not surprised with what you're saying with the police officers, the women who we interacted with. So we did data collection around female constables as well, because we wanted to see whether officers, when we change gender norms, do they also spill over to norms in the police station? But the thing is that most of the police officers, despite the high numbers in Bihar, are constables, so they're not senior officers, and there's, it's a very hierarchical profession, which, I mean, you could see why, but they shared a lot of experiences, and there's so many issues that women face. There's so many issues that police officers in general face, which we actually found: mental health, gastrointestinal, like so many things because of the pressures of duty. And those are just, again, like multiplied when it comes to women. So,
yeah. There is no psychological wing to take care of these things addressed when women approach.
Yes.
That is also another lacuna which has to be addressed along with this. Mental health is very important to stay stable and work to your best ability. Stress is not so good.
Yes.
And this is a very stressful job as a women police officer.
Yeah. In fact, the main field coordinator who we had, so we had a research assistant who was our eyes and ears on the ground. We sort of, spent a little bit of time in Bihar, but we had this one, R.A. Shubro. He's now doing his PhD at UCSD, San Diego. He found that during the study, when he was interacting with police officers, he found that they had such massive mental health issues. So he's actually started a parallel paper using our field, to work on that, to understand what mental health issues they have. He found high rates of suicide. Yes. So, really like extreme cases of mental health issues. And he's working on that to better understand it and to work with the police to develop solutions. So that's something that happened from this project.
Girija, to share with the audience here, Maharashtra Police did a study about gender friendliness of Maharashtra Police towards its own uniformed women officers with the help of Department of Psychology, Pune University, and Karnataka NLU, Bengaluru, has just finished this similar kind of study about women police in Karnataka. So it's not that we are not aware. We are trying our best, and we have identified the areas, toilet being one of the major, and work environment, gender respect, gender equality and cooperation. And women have come out that they are not happy, they are not satisfied. So leadership is aware and working towards it. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Hi, it's a nice presentation.
Mike.
I think we just need to press the button. Yes.
Nice presentation.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Azmat Karim, and I'm a criminologist. The question arises that you're taking the harassment in the public place. What about the harassment in the organizational level? Have you got some data on that? Like any big organization like us, we have the separate system that any employees have been harassed, they will go to the complaint to the HR.
Yes.
And if that is solved or not solved, resolved, or any FIR has been taken. Have you taken those data into your study?
So I actually have limited myself. My area of expertise is really harassment in public spaces. That's by choice. I could work on that, but there I can tell you a little bit about the work that's being done in the economics field at large. So first of all, we have in-house experts. I mean, I just met Professor, and they actually teach about POSH in NLU, so maybe she can come in. But just very quickly, in terms of economics, what we've done is there is work, which is it's a new field, much like this one. So nascent field where there's been work done on the consequences of harassment in workplace. And most of the work has been done with universities. So they have looked at, advisors who are harassing their advisees. So it's a workplace setting, but with clear measurement of outcomes. So they find that, for example, in Sweden, there's a study which shows that girls, for example, just keep dropping out of the PhD, and then they matched it with it's like the same perpetrators which are causing this dropout. So women are dropping out again. The key thing to see here is that there's this concept known as the leaky pipeline in gender, which is that every step there is some leakage of women. We are losing high potential, very talented women because so many reasons. Now imagine these women who have braved so much, like when we look at Delhi University colleges, so we find, I just want to complete, so they actually drop out. So there is all these consequences that have been measured, and there's also mental health effects that have been measured. So there's work on that. There's also new work in India on POSH, which maybe Professor can come in on, but these are the things that are happening.
But I'm from Bihar, and you have taken the data from the Bihar, and the majority of the victims, they will not come out because they think it's a stigma. So how you will compare those data? It's not biased or unbiased data.
So this is again such an important point to study anything to do with gender-based violence. So one of the biggest reasons why there's such an air of mystery around violence is because there's stigma. No one talks about it, no one reports it, and we see no one goes to the police, right? So that's why we have to innovate so much on measurement. So for example, when there is work done in the US, so in the US they have this unified data system. So any harassment which leads to injury has to go to the hospital, and then that is all triangulated. So you can link it to domestic abuse. So you can measure effects very well. Now in India that doesn't happen. Now in Bihar we are getting, in fact, literally next week we have 10 terabytes of data coming on FIRs from our 12 districts. And but that data is just going to show us a little bit. It's tip of the iceberg. How many women come, so many cases are withdrawn, so much action is not taken, right? So it's very hard to use that data in its current form. I mean, if you look at the nationally available data, NCRB data, right? It's at the district level. And if you look at the numbers, you'll be like, I mean, I personally know more people being abused than, in the data. So there's a lot of issues with the administrative data.
So you cannot compare the education level in the United States and in the Bihar, in where every 100 meters the language changes.
No.
The type of questionnaires you must have been standardized to complete these studies might have some, differences. The people will not understand what you are collecting data and what is the motto of it. Maybe they will hide certain things.
You are absolutely right. So in this data, actually, I'm sorry if that was not clear. So we've only worked with police officers. So the data that we've collected is only from police officers. The data that we collected on women's real experiences is actually from, we could not, so we have to go through a very rigorous ethical procedure to do any study. So you would obviously be aware, being a pulmonologist, right? So we cannot subject women to violence or send them with fake cases because that's just not ethically allowed. So what we did was we hired trained actors who went as, it's called decoys. So trained actors went to the police station saying that they were victims. They were trained actors who were told that they are doing the script, and they went, and that's how we recorded police officers' behaviors towards women. So the trained actors who went. So this is the only thing that we were allowed to do ethically, which was sound. And the trained actors who were sent only had permission from the DGP. So DGP was aware that this is going on. So they had the permission from there, but not in that particular police station. The attending officer did not know that this is an actor. And that's how we are measuring. And this is not our idea. This was done in drunken driving cases in Rajasthan. So authors of that paper, including the Nobel laureate Abhijit Banerjee, came up with this, and that's the method that we apply in our study.
But in the police also,
Yes.
There's some people, we might get some motive.
Can we shift to some?
But we can talk offline. This is again very important and so relevant to tease out the problem, which is very complex. Yes, please.
And brief questions,
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Two
This harassment is all across the board, there's no doubt about it. The severity is also there, and not only public places of religion, worship, hospital, everywhere.
Yes.
Now you have mainly worked with the police, but I think police is not the only solution. We have to sensitize the families and through different mediums, through different places, through plays and music and movies. So I think we have to expand this. Then only this problem will be addressed. This is my.
No. So I completely agree. I have only presented. I have been working on this for a long time. I have now I think 7 to 8 policy solutions that I've tested out. I've only presented 2 today because they're related to police. And I'm limiting myself to this because otherwise we'd have to be here for the whole day. So we don't want to do that. But I agree. Many levers to be used.
2 short questions.
Yes, please.
Did you find anything that we have been talking about the self-defense with women having, been taught, or for years you see they are trying to do something
Yes.
in self-defense?
Yes.
Whether women really adopted that kind of thing over the years you have gone through? And secondly, what is the impact of Bollywood stories actually on the psychology of men actually, because harassment comes out of some visual things also, which have happened. It's murders have happened, other things have happened. So impact of Bollywood on these things, say human psychology, and the self-defense part of it. Because we heard marshals are there, they are there in the buses, and government has done some things also, but whether it is impacted or not.
Yes. So Bollywood, there is actually a lot of qualitative work which shows that how Bollywood has influence on masculinity and just violent behavior in general. But I have personally not done anything. But this is a relevant point. I mean, this is truly something which affects, just norms also in the society and how they are projected and everything. In terms of self-defense, I think, the biggest problem with that approach is that, again, it's putting the onus on the woman. Protect yourself. Men will be men. Women should protect. No, this is the narrative we need to change. Men need to change first. Then we will think about women adapting. But the point is so that's my biggest issue. And this is another issue with gender segregated spaces. Put women in one dabba, leave 8 dabba for men. Why, bhai? When half the women in the metro are, so this is something that we need to work on. When we think of solutions, we have to think of what they mean, the signal that they're giving to women, the young girls who are growing up, including my daughter, so we have to make sure that the right messaging and the spaces are built. Thank you.
Thank you for very valuable information, but I have a question about the study itself. You did 2 parts. One is to actually find out safe spaces, but then you go to a solution with due respect, finding out whether the policing actually makes the space unsafe. But you go right to, well, we now test it with the police presence. Why? There's no internal consistency in my opinion, but you may. The second is with the policing. Did any parameter like women police officers or men police officers, was there a difference?
So, sorry, I will have to request you to repeat the first question.
You have done, there are 2 parts.
Yes.
One is safe spaces.
Yes.
Women find them space. Did you come to the conclusion because it was a policing?
Yes, I mean, we
You
find...
didn't say that. That's
Oh, sorry. So, what? Sorry. So, I said that...
Because otherwise the next thing that you police, you're testing that.
Yeah. So, there's 2 parts to this. So, this is a little bit more subtle. So, policing did work at reducing severe forms of harassment.
No, before you started testing whether policing worked,
Right.
did you find out that the safe spaces are because of policing?
No. So, there is money which is being put to have police officers patrol to reduce harassment. But they don't know if it works. So, we came in to test if it works or not. Is this something that the government should be putting money in, essentially?
No, I can understand that, but why did you do the first part, that they are unsafe spaces, unless you come to the conclusion that it's policing, and that policing works, doesn't work?
So we did not come in with unsafe. We just had spaces which exist where women face harassment. Then we measured what police does to those spaces. Does it make it safer or not? That's it. That's all we
Okay,
did.
what about whether women police officers or men police?
So women police officers are all lower ranked officers, and they were mixed into these teams. So there were 2 to 3 officers, of which one was woman, always a woman. So we cannot actually separate her effect from the other officers who were present, who were almost always men. But there's other work, in fact, by one of my co-authors, that shows that women police stations are effective in making women come to report. So it makes more women come out to the police stations and report. They do not reduce the violence, but they make women come out and talk about it. So that's also a positive.
Is your co-author in the room?
No, she's not.
And then, ma'am, I'll come to you. Sir.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair and Girija. I came with high expectations, and the expectations have been exceeded. Now, one point about your methodology, the thoroughness and the sophistication. One wonders whether the GDP is measured with the same level of thoroughness and sophistication. Now, the second point.
Oh, poverty.
It will be nice if you can find the time to go to the police training college in Hyderabad And before that, you may have a session with the Delhi police.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, hi, and thank you, Girija, for a wonderful presentation. I couldn't have agreed with you more the way you have hit the topic. Again, I'll join Sir in appreciating you. But there have been so many other points, of course, which are not part of your study, but working with my students at ground level, I can tell you one part that you have taken the parental decisions. So we have parents who come to our university to admit their daughters to become lawyers, and they are so worried if they don't get the hostel, they'll take their daughters back to admit them to some other college. Let this college, please, even if this is number 2 college in the country, but yeah, law college, but please don't study here. We'll take our daughters and admit them anywhere. So of course parental decisions, and we make our daughters weak by every time telling them. So I have hundreds of students who will tell, my mother will tell me कि photo upload कर दो, तुम खाना खा रही हो, तुम घूमने गई हो, तुम सो रही हो, तुम किसके साथ जा रही हो. And if they go for international moot court competitions, and that's a hell for them. And of course the moment a college or the university gains popularity, number of women students will somehow not match the number of boys. I don't know, there are hundreds of parameters, but one of the, of course, the factors is the kind of that, issues pertaining to harassment. Why do girls feel, I don't know, there is usually a demarcation in the colleges, girls lobby and boys lobby. So yeah, if you have residential hostels, then there are again another issues of harassment, which I am very sure, because you are dealing with public harassment, so institutional harassments are different, and there are many contours to this, many colors to this. And educational institutions, I think another study that you can take up. And the way you have conducted the study, that's marvelous. And together, like if we work on these issues, maybe it would be like, if we discuss, it would be another study. So,
That's great.
Thank
We
you
must.
very much. Yeah, thanks.
I would just continue and add one experience of mine in addition to math. I'm a principal in a law college, and one incident happened. I have so many paralegal volunteers working with the police stations and the legal services authorities in Delhi, district legal services authorities. And once my female students were deputed for help desk in a police station, I received a call from a parent that, sir, would it be safe to send my daughter to a police station for performing duty? This is the state of affairs in our country, and even the law students and their parents do not feel it safe to send their daughters to police station. And one more incident happened at a metro station. At a metro station where a girl student was harassed by a police officer, security personnel there only, and she called me. I said, I am with you, make a complaint, call police, and police started harassing that girl again. And later on, his father called me that, sir, you are instigating my child. This is my daughter. She is my daughter. I have to take care of her. And he wrote an apology then and there. Thereafter, I asked that girl, are you really going into legal profession? So this is a very sorry state
very
of
sad
affairs.
reflection. Ma'am, you wanted to?
Yeah, my question is because I'll be writing about it, so.
Take the mic.
Please, Mike.
I think one seat would be enough given my size. Given I'm supposed to write it for the Delhi edition, and Sir has also proposed talking to Delhi police about this. I have understood that you have taken reference and inference from the study that you have done in Delhi, Jerusalem, and then you have tried to propose a solution based on the inputs and work that you've done in Hyderabad. So anything that you would like to talk about the city Delhi, because your study, one of the studies was done in Delhi. So can gender bias curriculum, if adopted by the Delhi police, it can really work, is what you think, or there are other suggestions too?
So Again, I think the effects from Bihar show that it is effective on certain parameters which are valuable. So we've actually, my co-author Nishit Prakash, he's been working with the Ministry of Home Affairs to think about ways on how we can scale this across the board. But right now, I think the next plan is to move to UP. And then from then, Delhi is not on the cards right now, but hopefully down the line, once we've really established that this works and made it perfect for cross context. So.
But do you think that holistically, for example, I don't cover crime, but I
Yes.
do cover traffic.
Yes.
And recently, the Delhi Traffic Police has proposed curriculum in schools कि आपको road safety training देना चाहिए. Or probably they
It's
have
actually
these
really fun. My daughter
small,
went for
small
that.
cells.
It's very fun. She really enjoyed it, and now she tells me also where the zebra crossing is. So, I mean, I think it's
So,
very good.
And उनके खुद के road safety.
Oh yeah, and my
sessions.
daughter is 5 years old, 5.5. So even she now, I think that training is very good.
So उनके कुछ सेशंस होते हैं जैसे रोड सेफ्टी सेशंस में कई बार वो विमेन को स्पेसिफिकली ट्रेन करते हैं जब वो नाइट में ट्रैवल करती हैं.
Right.
तो वो ऐसा बिलीव करते हैं कि रात की ट्रेनिंग जब भी हम ट्रेनिंग देते हैं इट माइट हेल्प विमेन. सो डू यू थिंक कि ऐसे करिकुलम्स होलिस्टिकली अगर सोचे जाएं तो help कर सकते?
See, I think the key is that we need to invest more in our officers. We expect a lot from them, we don't invest enough in them. So that is the lesson that I took away from my experiences in Bihar. So we need to figure out what they need and give it to them. And a part of that is this gender training.
And
That's what I
Girija, you are
think.
very lucky that DG Bihar, with his collaboration, you could give 24 to 30 hours training to
Yes.
police officers.
So ma'am, actually fun story. Whoever we collaborate with becomes DGP.
Oh, okay.
He was not DGP.
Unfortunately, I am retired now. But I want to share that in the next study you can do that, and we can find out.
And you can choose your favorite officer to collaborate with us.
Officers once recruited all over India, they go through 9 months basic training. After that, they rarely ever go in for refreshers.
Absolutely.
And here you are saying that you could give them 24 to 30 hours. Input
No, but they
on
should go
gender.
back, na? Why not?
Because see, our audience here must know, international recommended ratio of police is 222 police officers per lakh of the population.
Oh, this is
And in India, we have only 150.
correct.
And internationally, they don't have these bandobas and these security duties. So with 150 per lakh, a police station in charge would not relieve even a single constable for training in the headquarters.
So this is the reason we had to do a staggered rollout. So we basically rolled out district by district. We focused on one district, and then we told them, okay, please send them. And then all the orders came from the top. I mean, that's the only way this happened.
And second, this is true,
True.
that what we call anti-gunda staff, which also takes care of what is known as in police station parlors road Romeos, they are always in civil clothes. So your point is very pertinent that this anti-gunda staff, if in uniform,
Might be
is
more
in
effective.
preventing
Yes.
and also reduces the paperwork.
Correct.
We are so full of paper and documentation that if you can give us a strategy which will reduce our paperwork, they would love it.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
So, I am a practicing lawyer, like ma'am said, and I've been passed out.
There's a lot of lawyers here. I think I should be a little worried.
No, I'm completing my research on implementation of sexual harassment law.
Okay.
And thankfully, I've been passed out from LSR. I'm just so glad to see my principal sitting here, Dr. Gopinath. And then, very fortunately, I didn't face any such problems in LSR or either in my law college from Campus Law Center, Delhi University. However, ma'am, in my research, I've seen that even though the police officers now are earlier they were not very readily taking FIRs, they didn't consider it a very serious offense. And most of the time, all of my clients who came to me and they said that they're saying कि कौन सी बड़ी बात है, हाथ ही तो लगाया है, कोई नहीं. And then I said, no, you just, then I'll accompany them, I'll force them, okay, fine. That is what even my colleagues have said, that they'll accompany and they'll just get the FIR done. However, the problem mainly comes in the charge sheet. When they frame the charge sheet, it is so weak that you cannot fight a case and win it. So if you'll see the conviction rate, even if the charge sheets are being filed 80% of the cases, according to the NCRP data, the 80% of the charge sheets are being filed from 100% of FIRs to 80% charge sheet, but the conviction rate is just 20%. So that is the main problem, that the charge sheet, the offense, the ingredients of the offense is not very well understood by the officers, and also there is a problem with the lawyers as well. The public prosecutors, because these cases are represented for women usually by public prosecutors, and the women who do not have money to hire personal, like their private lawyers or anything, the public prosecutors get into it. And even the public prosecutors, like, कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है, छोटा मोटा केस ही तो है, कोई रेप केस होता तो देख लेते हैं, कोई नहीं मैडम आप सेटलमेंट कर लो ना, खत्म करवा दो. They have this kind of behavior. So they also do not put their heart and soul into these cases, and that
can we focus on the research, on her research, please?
Yes, ma'am. That is what. So, how does the training entail? How these officers are being trained in making the charge sheet also, in recognizing the ingredients of the offense, and then because if the charge sheet is not proper, then the conviction will obviously not happen.
No, so we did. We knew about this and we have thought about it, and that's why we are getting the 10 terabytes of data, which we are going to be. So in the technical skills module, we focused on this, like what are the aspects that you need to make sure that you record, and the tone and everything matters. So we have not analyzed that data yet. We've actually not even, the data is in Patna, we have to get it.
How did you design the questionnaire?
The question.
Standardize the questionnaire.
So not.
Girija, we have ma'am waiting there.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. But we can talk later, but we have thought about this.
Please.
Yes.
Ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Girija. With you and Meeran today, it's such an energy-packed. Thank you very, very much indeed. I've got 3 questions, short ones. When you do these trainings, and especially the ones that you do in the lab, how do you actually come to terms with these notions of mardangi, masculinity? Because these are intractable as far as I know. The second issue on which there's a lot of confusion is the issue of consent. You know, how do you explain what is consent and what is not consent, especially in these matters? You know, and again, this question was already asked, I think, by Mr. Grover. Do all women's police stations make a difference? And you said they do. But just to kind of, the other question is about witness intervention. Third-party witness, do you train them about how a person who's watching something happening has an equal right to complain? That was one. And I just wanted to share with you that in the studies and trainings that we've done, especially in universities, we found that universities are some of the most misogynist of spaces. And the institutionalization of protectionism and paternalism is rampant. I mean, just about every rule you can unravel and you will find implicit gender biases in it. But that's just a question apart. Because I would be very interested to know how you deal with these. And
thank you. So on the masculinity, that was actually a core component of our training. And that's when we focused on masculinity at the workplace when you are an officer. We didn't sort of get into masculinity in terms of broad social norms. But we did that, and that's when we showed all these, uber masculine Bollywood actors like Amitabh Bachchan being like, when like thrashing things is the sign of power.
He's an old man. Why are you stuck up?
No, because he speaks so much to the officers. You show them Amitabh Bachchan, rapt attention. So he's actually a very powerful tool. So I'm not getting after him. I'm actually saying that, it comes back to the point of if Bollywood was done right, maybe we didn't need to do this. So, that's...
Just to interrupt, we use a lot of Amitabh Bachchan, especially the Pink film.
Yes.
Where he's taking
right.
And it really resonates.
Right. Yeah, it's something about, he's him for a reason. So, and then the other one is about consent. So because of, that's again a difference between like intimate partner violence or any intimate and street harassment. So street harassment is just never consensual. So there is no concept of consent there. It's usually most of it, over 80% of it is stranger harassment. So people who you've never met, faceless crowds who are groping you, and that sort of leaves women feeling very vulnerable. And women police stations, there's just that one paper that I mentioned, and I should have said correctly, 2 of my co-authors are on that, and that's about increased reporting by women. Yes. Hi, ma'am.
We have conducted a study in Bureau of Police Research and Development, all women's police stations are not working well. Women in all police stations. That is a much better model. More women in police stations than all women police stations.
It was terrific listening to your different spaces that you shared, the data and your strategy and methodology. I am convinced that you have a magic handbook out there, which using 24 to 30 hours and self-reported impact, it's phenomenal. I want to lay my hands on this magic book.
Yeah, we'd be very happy to share.
And actually, I heard when I was in DC last month, one of your colleagues did tell me about this handbook and said I should get hold of it, but she didn't mention your name, so I'm delighted. No, I have two questions. One is, the bit on changing social norms in terms of their attitude. Obviously, it wasn't norms, but it was their attitude that you were able to...
Correct.
When did you do the evaluation? Was it soon after? And are you going to look at what happened 6 months later or a year later? I mean, all of us forget our trainings, and why not the police? Is it long term? So are you going to look at it? And third, changing gender norms. We know whether it's behavior change communication or trainings, it is the most difficult where it comes to gender issues. And where it comes also, as Meenakshi pointed out, the masculinity, how do you
Mardangi,
Mardangi. Yeah, I don't know how to say it in that nice Hindi name. But so with the police, I am very impressed that you did manage to change their attitude.
It's sort of the hardest to move population, everyone said.
So I have a few, it's the hardest to do, so really congratulations. What about, who did the training? Did you do it yourself? Who were the people involved? Because then again, this is a dream training team. I'm putting together a team to work with senior people in one of the government departments where there's a lot of police, and the perpetrators are also senior. Many of them are senior police officers, so I have much to learn from you. So I'm going to get in touch and see how we can learn from you. And finally, I do want to say, in terms of changing social norms around the issues, do you think a broader behavior change approach using Hindi film industry, Bollywood, and other ways, do you think that will, in terms of, someone mentioned the people who are watching, the bystanders and so on, do you think we could do on this specific issue of sexual harassment of women or all forms of harassment of women in public places? So, can we have a behavior change communication program? Have you thought about it?
So that's a lot of questions, but you're absolutely right. So we're working with attitudes of police officers. We measured the effects 4 to 6 months after we expose them. We do not plan to go back for a long-term follow-up. We are convincing the police, so the Bihar police, to do some refresher courses on a regular basis, because I think that's really important. In terms of the curriculum, we worked with a team to develop, and then another team to actually implement. And I'd be very happy to
And it's in Hindi?
Yes, everything in Shuddh Hindi. Like, my Hindi improved while developing these modules. So, and then I think on the behavioral change and, employing edutainment, ma'am, I think you are better placed to say how effective they are with your work with Victor and PFI leading all that. So, but evidence from your work with Victor shows that, it is truly effective. We do not know so much about street harassment. There is work in Mexico which shows bystander training was actually not particularly effective when it came to that, because again, they just employed posters in the buses, right? It's the passive things don't work with such sensitive issues, is I think the takeaway there. But what you have done, and with like all these top actors like Farhan Akhtar, I know, and that really worked. So maybe that will work. But I would leave that job to you and Victor, given that that's your area of expertise.
One quick point I wanted to make.
Also, how many more questions? Let me...
No. This
One,
is not a
two.
question. This is just a.
So,
comment.
ma'am, be brief. We have 3, and then I think
Yeah,
it'll be.
yeah. So, we had the same paranoia that parents across economic class backgrounds have, not just the poor. When our daughter decided to go to Delhi University and we were living in Mehroli, what did we do? We shifted this side. We
Oh
moved
wow,
to-
that does
No.
not happen.
No, but it has to happen. It should happen. And we thought that we had no other choice.
Okay, sir.
In my data,
Then
that
ma'am,
never
and then
happens.
you.
So
3, that's.
Yeah, hi. Thanks
Yes.
for the paper. For Delhi, you said in response to the intersectionality that obviously there are these whatever risky or kind of questions, but you already have this census data of 2011 with going to the really like a small block where you can at least get the religion and at least 2 social group information.
sorry, I do have religion, and I do not find any differences on that. I don't have caste.
No, so that you can get from, at least for 2 groups, you can get from the census enumeration. And that you can then, as long as you have information for the place of residence or PIN code or some kind of thing, it is possible at least to go one step further. That's what I would say, because then that would actually help us to understand, at least for the Delhi city.
Yeah.
So thanks for the paper.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
This is just a suggestion. Since you've done such a good job, I'm requesting you to go further. Use one state as a module. Come up with the solutions and the problems that exist and the solutions to those problems. Make it a module and present it to some wise people, if there are any in the government, to proceed further with other states. Maybe that will also be effective. Institutions also could be involved. All institutions and management could be involved in that also, and make it a wider thing.
Yes.
You know.
So we are trying to do that. I mean, I've left that to my more senior colleagues who have more time, but they are doing that and engaging with the Ministry of Home
And
Affairs.
I rely on you to do it better.
Ma'am, yeah, sorry, I missed you, ma'am. Please.
I loved your passion, and I don't want to dampen it, but yet I have a tremendous sense of deja vu, because when you're my age and you've been with the women's issues for this long, you've heard these reports
Yeah.
of what can be done with the police, not for the first time.
Right.
The studies are made and some training done, and then we go back to it. So what I have been talking about for a long time, but seem to have got nowhere with it, is to say why, and you are now with the World Bank, and that's why I took the time to come here and also took the time to pressure to get hold of the mic to speak, that you're with the World Bank, and we don't need itsy-bitsy studies which are showing curriculum reform any longer. Why are you not looking at, I mean, everybody's talking about what happens after something has happened, and so the police comes in. But what about the root causes? And we have a situation today where you almost dismiss this thing of the Bollywood, that's not your field. But leave alone Bollywood, every mobile phone today is dynamite with pornography. And every young man and old man, and our parliamentarians often, as has been reported, within the presence of, state legislative assemblies and one, are watching porn. And you then have not just sexual harassment, but you have rape, and look at the astronomical rise that is there in rape cases. And as you very rightly pointed out, your facts, statistics are only tip of the iceberg. So why is the World Bank and people like you who are gifted researchers not looking at these issues? I'm glad Indra Jaising is in the room, and if you remember, 30 years ago, we tried to get, you filed the case with the National Commission of Women, you see, because there was an article in Time magazine and I'm talking of late 90s, when they were threatening to bring in what today is all over the place, direct-to-home television. And this article in the business section of Time, titled Sex After Supper, literally had a whole page which said, we will have Indian men salivating with, the kind of fare which now is being dished out, not just on the mobile, the internet, openly acknowledged. 50 to 60% of the internet today is pornography. And yet, we are going on and on saying, we need more band-aids, we need more bandages, we need this, but nobody is talking about why and how is this happening. And I would say to people like Indra and Anand sitting here in this room, it's a constitutional violation. Pornography is not freedom of speech. So why are we all silent?
Would you like
Unless we address these issues, you can go on. And the police, for that matter, the subject focus of your talk today, the police is part of the public. They reflect their attitudes. They are probably as much watching the porn, no matter what your training is, because it is so all pervasive today. And I think we need to get serious. Thank you.
So, I mean, again, this is,
I
agree that these are deep-rooted problems, and you're right that we need to address, not address the symptoms, but the problem, which is not happening here. I agree with you. I think, again, so you mentioned the World Bank many times, but the one thing that we need to do at the bank is also try to find something which is cost-effective and tangible and achievable, right? So actually, almost all of this work was started before I was at the bank, interestingly, except for the Tanzania work. So this is all PhD time work. But with these results, then nothing is enough, but had started conversations where, a lot of work is now being embedded to avoid sort of issues which otherwise would be taking place. And I can share examples offline with you. But on, what can be done in terms of changing norms. And so the one piece of evidence that I want to talk about is work by a dear friend in Haryana, where they basically partnered with schools. We really need to start that early. So elementary schools, where they worked with boys and girls to change their views around what is gender and what are women supposed to be doing, what their mothers are supposed to be doing. And they found absolutely amazing effects. So they find that these little kids are not only more gender equal in their views, but they're also able to change behaviors back home. So really, that's where we need to start. So I agree with you, that's what we need to do. But I think at the same time, we have so many resources, yes, it's only 150 officers per lakh of people, but it's still a lot of officers given our population. And if we can make those existing resources work better, with just up to 30 hours of training, I think it's a good idea. So that's sort of the angle and the lens that I am coming in with my work.
The chair will tell you better, but the reports on police reforms, beginning from Wayne Marwa, are this high, not acted upon. So I don't know how much reform you will bring in.
Hi, I am Kritika. I'm also a lawyer. So some 20 or slightly more than that, 20 years back, I did take a self-defense training with the Delhi.
Oh,
yeah,
nice. Okay.
which was being organized by the Delhi police at that time. And at that time, yes, not that I remember much of it right now, but yes, at that time when I took that training, I remember my mom would take me every day during the summer vacations for that training. It did make me feel that, okay, I was better equipped, better prepared and all of that. So do you think that through your research and through your collaboration with the Ministry of Home Affairs, is it possible to actually convert the police officers into the agents of change in the sense that,
they deliver the training?
Yeah, they deliver the training and they bring about that soft change within the mindsets and, connecting or getting police officers to be connected with schools and with educational institutes where they are actually addressing the younger, students.
That's a great idea. Yeah. I'm not sure if that already happens.
Yeah, we do that.
Oh, I was thinking that, yeah.
Last question, please. Yeah.
I'll just take 1 minute. Taking off from the last comments you made and from what Romi Chawla just now said and so many others. Like, what about getting to the root cause, education, this, that, and the other? Having been in a university for 40 years,
oh, wow.
JNU, and I can see a student sitting president, former president sitting there. And I can say that it works if you actually go to the institution, educational institution. In JNU, for 40 years, you've had a campus where women felt free.
Yes.
Nowhere in the world, and I've traveled to at least.
I spent a month in JNU as a student before I started at Cambridge. I walked everywhere, anytime. Yes.
So it can be done. Mindsets did get changed,
yes.
Over a couple of years. But I'm saying this only to say, also to add that it is not unrelated to the police. Within the police service, we have often been told that if there is a communal situation, we look for a JNU person. If there is a gender issue, we look for a JNU person. So the focusing on educational institutions
is very
would be so critical.
Yes.
And what we are doing is destroying JNU and such like institutions.
Can I just respond to Ramiji?
Yes.
Yeah, you want?
No, I think that's a fundamental question that you raised, and I'll just take a minute. During the HIV, when it was at its height, we were able to talk about sex. The ignorance about sexuality within the family. Educational institutions are much later. In the family, there's absolutely no education about sexuality. No, the mothers, the father of course doesn't want to talk about it. Mothers don't have the courage to talk to their children. But only within the HIV scenario, for a short time, we were able to get parents and especially mothers to talk to them about sexuality and discuss within the family and then to the friends, where you're taught about respect to women. Now that is what is really needed. Why are they watching porn? Why? That is the first question we must ask. And I think there's a big problem.
Excuse me. The first question you have to ask is, why is there porn?
No, I agree.
On channels in this country, when we say there is a law that doesn't permit it.
Yes.
So, then you are fighting fire brigades.
No, but I think we are not at cross purposes. If there is porn, is it serving a need or is it a disease or what it is? We need to know this thing and we have to address it. These things are much later. That's your main point. These are much later. We need to tackle at the root. And I think that is the conversation we must have.
So if permitted, we can conclude now. So Girija, I think the House congratulates you for
Thank you.
A very focused study. And the methodology I thought was excellent, and you could reach the audience and you could reach the police officers, you could come with very strong conclusions, and the things are not as bad as we sometimes perceive. I would like to share in conclusion that in 1991, with the help of Tata Institute of Social Sciences, we held a workshop in Aurangabad on gender sensitization. After 2 days, an officer got up and he said, Marathi में he said, मैम आप हमको क्या सिखा रहे हो? अगर मेरी बेटी देर से आई घर में, मैंने उसको एक झापड़ दे दिया, और अगर उसके आदमी ने, उसके हस्बैंड ने उसको झापड़ दे दिया, तो क्या हो गया गलत? So from that, in 1991, in 2025, no police officer would even dare to say that, and I must assure you, they won't even think of that. You have made a very valid point that we have to invest in training our police officers, that you made an effort, and that you have also conveyed the need and the utility of having uniformed officers patrolling and making the public spaces safe is your contribution to the society, and we all sitting here applaud the same. You and your team. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
gives you more ideas.